think life might get interesting here now. Apparently here in Vancouver, it's officially declared as a state of emergency, they said. Like it says here, COVID-19, you need to know. Van City Council voted to declare a local state of emergency as a result of COVID-19. This allows staff to take additional measures to ensure we have the resources needed to maintain essential services and meet the demands of all other agencies. There was this online, conference and broadcast of the actual meeting to take place. And I guess it's the first time they've used something like that for a lot of people, like video conferencing it seems like, because it seems like a lot of people were confused. Hey, what's the process? We just want to vote on this, get it over with. That's what it felt like anyways. But ultimately, what does this mean? Even from all the reports and stuff like that, it seems like the few pointers here, like it says here, according to a report from Johnson, declaring a state of emergency gives the city manager, deputy city manager, and fire chief additional emergency powers, including the ability to acquire or use land or personal property to prevent, respond, or alleviate the effects of the emergency, including the use of buildings to assist with the increased demands for healthcare, shelter, and childcare. So am I reading that right? Where if need be, they could literally take someone's residential home and say, we're turning this into a hospital now or something like that? Procure any clothing, equipment, medical supplies, or other essential supplies required to cope with the emergency for the duration of the emergency. I would imagine that's about controlling things like retailer supplies and all that, which in some ways I would say is necessary. With how panicked some people are, they're going extremely overboard. And it says restrict the use or occupancy of any premises within the city of Vancouver, saying, quote, "It isn't the kind of wide sweeping measures that will change the entire city," he said, adding that it will give the city the power to enact any specific recommendations coming from the province. For example, it would give the city power to temporarily use a building or space to set up additional shelter space, which is what I was wondering if that's the case, they can take up anyone's home or anything like that. A lot of them are already doing this, but this will basically affect businesses and stuff like restaurants. It says the bylaw would also enable the city to restrict activities in certain businesses. Earlier this week, Sturwood raised concerns about people packing bars and restaurants on St. Patrick's Day. Vancouver Coastal Health Chief Medical Officer Dr. Patricia Daly subsequently ordered all bars, restaurants, lounges, and other similar venues closed on March 17th. However, the mayor noted yesterday that many smaller restaurants remained open to patrons and some Vancouverites were still out Tuesday night. So how will things change in the next few days? Who knows? I know the general mentality of all this is still split, where you still have the people saying for the most part it's containable, like people shouldn't freak out, and basically you have the other side saying no, every single measure should be taken. Basically no one should go out at all regardless, so absolutely everybody should stay at home unless it's mandatory. It is kind of interesting reading some of the comments and stuff online about this, with this state of emergency announcement. Like this guy here says, is this a joke? This is what happens when you allow some 2-bit local political powers to enact such stupidity. The provincial government should immediately tell the mayor of Vancouver to stand down. Another one says the medical supply chain is fine because a few are getting seriously sick, but so many other areas are starting to have real problems. Most people are nearly broke. I hope these people bring things back online very soon. What's the general opinion of people, in general about this? Do you think this warrants a state of emergency, so to speak, around an area like this? Because it makes me think too, for myself, for a state of emergency, when I think about that, I'm thinking of bombs coming from the sky and so forth, airplanes, World War, stay in your house, that type of thing. For that, I could see why people would want to buy 6 months worth of supplies and stuff like that. Whereas this one's a little mixed because you have this, then they're saying, for example, it's, containable. We just want people who are healthy and all that or whatever stay home so we can control it and not clog up the health system and all that. But yeah, just makes you wonder if this will change things dramatically and whether or not it will actually split people as well. I know for myself, it's not so much the virus itself that I would be worried about. It's more about the misinformation and the hysteria. It's just creating things racism and all that. It's kind of ridiculous. That would be what I would be worried about mostly. It's basically people being so uneducated and acting irrationally. Makes me wonder if we'll see stuff like this, because I was reading how in other places, Hong Kong, how they're trying to contain stuff like this. This one says, Hong Kong is putting electronic wristbands on arriving passengers to enforce coronavirus quarantine. The measure comes as the government announced that starting midnight on March 19th, it is putting all arriving passengers under a 2-week quarantine and medical surveillance. The city's leader, Carrie Lam, said the 57 new cases Hong Kong recorded in the past 2 weeks, 50 were travelers from overseas. The wristbands are connected to a smartphone app and will be used to make sure people actually stay at home. Oh man, that's going like, I don't know, to another level. That makes you think of, whatchamacallit, that drone to phone thing. You guys remember that controversy? Oh man. Like if something was introduced like that here, for example, to say, okay, we're gonna make sure everyone stays within their house, so we're ordering this law that you have to have these wristbands, would people be okay with that? Or would they say that's overboard, for example? Oh man, I can already hear like those conspiracy theories saying, oh man, this virus or whatever was all man-made. It's basically a way to freak someone else. They introduce stuff like this so people would say it's a great idea. I wouldn't doubt if that actually starts coming up now in terms of news and all that. On the topic of drones, I read this one. It says, Dunzo, Throttle, get DGCA approval to conduct drone experiment. The DGCA has given approval to drone maker Throttle Aerospace Systems and hype delivery platform Dunzo to conduct experimental flights of remotely piloted aircrafts or drones. Out of the 34 expressions of interest applications applied for conducting beyond visual line of sight drone experiment, these 2 firms have been selected, said a senior DGCA officials to N-Tracker. It's kind of interesting how there's an actual time limit to this stuff. It says the approval has been given to conduct safe BVLOS experiment for 100 hours and give the report to DGCA, added the official. After the submission of proof of concepts by the firms, the aviation regulator will formulate the BVLOS regulation. Both firms are expected to start conducting experiments by April end. And why this is important for them, it says the DGCA is conducting experiments for next generation civil aviation requirement. At present, DGCA regulations allow only visual line of sight. In May of last year, DGCA had invited applications for conducting BVLOS experiments of remotely piloted aircraft in India. Meanwhile, Dunzo confirmed today that they have received approval to conduct the experiment. The move is likely to pave the way for drones being used in air taxis and air deliveries in India. Many observers and experts of the logistics space believe that drones can play an important role in enhancing logistics services in the country. Yeah, that's pretty much going to be the case eventually, where these things will be everywhere, so to speak. It makes you think like nowadays, like even here, it'd probably be useful if the people are that afraid to go, oh, there's all these restrictions, you want this stuff to be, I guess, flying from place to place and bringing you, I guess, important items and all that, huh? Again, it'll be interesting to see how life changes, if at all anyways, with all these changes in the state of emergency. Times like this, it makes you want to go back into history books just to see all the other events that were like this, or times where people thought it was the end of the world, see how we reacted, and whether or not that was the right decision when you look back at it. Alright, see you guys later.